Hello and welcome. This is Mouse Gunner, and we're back with some more Automation, the Car Company Tycoon game. Continuing on with the campaign roleplay of the Edison Car Company. Now, we just finished up the 1981 year period, so it's time to move on to a new era, and we're going to find ourselves in 1986. And as I like to start off every year period, I usually start with the car that's the lowest down in our lineup, our small economy car, the Edison Luna. And we're going to go ahead and do the engines in this video. As usually I do the engines, then the car build. Now, whether or not they fix some of the bugs and issues we've been seeing in the last couple videos might make me decide on whether or not I'm going to do the car builder in our next video or just go on to the next engine. We'll have to see when that update comes and whether or not it fixes those issues, as I said. In any case, let's focus on what we're going to do for this year period. So let's sort our engines by year here. Oh, wait, we're not on engines yet. Now we're on engines. There we go. So the main two engines we're going to be looking at are the LE81 and the L13581. And bringing them up to date to 1986. So we're not really going to be building new engines here. We're just revising the old engines. I thought about getting rid of the old L135 engine and replacing it with something new. But as it's 1986 and in the game, you can't get access to fuel injection until 1988. I think I'm going to hold off into the next era to make that switch. So we're going to get rid of the old L135 engine. The L135 engine was the first engine, one of the first engines we used, the direct acting overhead cam setup, as well as an aluminum block and aluminum head. And I think it dates back to the 60s, if I remember correctly. So, it's getting on in age. And it's getting around time to start replacing it. But I think I'm going to hold off to the next era. So mostly we're going to be doing some revision here. So we're going to start off a new engine. We're going to start with the LE series of engines, which is going to be a 1.6 liter engine. First, starting off with essentially what would be the base engine for this car. The L135 engine has actually been kind of upgraded to an optional engine in this at this point, at least in 1981 it was, and I think it will be the same in 1986. Okay, before we get too far into things, I always like to bring in my little reference here of what Chevy's got going in this year period. So we have a number of four-cylinder engines. First, we have the base engine that's in the Chevette. This is an overhead cam engine. They don't specify whether it's single overhead cam or dual overhead cam, but I'm going to assume it's a single overhead cam. Usually when you just say overhead cam, you're referring to a single overhead cam. And I also doubt that Chevy would be using a dual overhead cam in this particular instance. In any case, it's cast iron block and head. Displacement is 98 cubic inches or 1.6 liters. And we're going to be going off of liters for from now on. Earlier on in our company's history, we focused more on the cubic inch numbers, and that's where you get the 135 from in the name for the L135. Compression ratio comes in at 9. We're going to have a hard time competing with that. I've already talked about that in other videos, though, so that's not going to be anything surprising. Brake horsepower comes in at 65 at 5,200 RPM, and torque comes in at 80 foot-pounds of torque at 3,200 RPM, so that's a decent amount of torque. It is a two-barrel carb. We have another engine for the Chevette, which is diesel, so we're just going to skip right through that because there are no diesel engines in the game. So the next engine is the base engine for the Nova. It is another overhead cam engine. It is cast iron as well. It's got a displacement of 97 cubic inches, but they have it listed as 1.6 liters, probably doing a little bit of creative rounding there. That's commonly done by car companies, so that's not too surprising. Compression ratio is 9 again. Brake horsepower comes in at 74 at 5,200 RPM, and we've got 86 foot-pounds of torque. So that's a pretty good performance engine there, and it's also got a two-barrel carb. We have another engine here, which is going to be the base engine for the Cavalier. This is an overhead valve engine, which is also known as a pushrod engine, and that's the way they refer to it in the game. It is also a cast iron engine. Displacement comes in at 2 liters or 121 cubic inches. Compression ratio is 9 again. Brake horsepower comes in at 85 at 4,800 RPM, and the torque comes in at 110 foot-pounds of torque at 2,400 RPM. It is throttle body fuel injection. So we've got the fuel injection coming in there. This engine will probably be hard to compete with as a result of that. Moving along, we have one more four-cylinder engine. This is the base for the Celebrity and Camaro. It's another overhead valve engine. It is cast iron as well. And it's got 151 cubic inch or 2.5 liters. It is another compression ratio of 9. Brake horsepower comes in at 92 at 4,400 RPM, or 88 for the Camaro at 4,400 RPM. And torque comes in at 134 foot-pounds at 2,800 RPM, or for the Camaro, it actually comes a little under that at 130 foot-pounds of torque. It's interesting that that's the only engine where we have a couple different performance numbers. It could be a result of different exhaust setup and things like that. So apparently this engine produces different numbers depending on what car it's in. And again, it is throttle body fuel injection. So again, you have that fuel injection, which we're not going to have access to. So that's pretty much wrapping up what Chevy has for us, so we get a direct comparison to real life. So let's go ahead and build our own engine. For now, I'm just going to be setting things up the way it was set up in 1981 for the LE engine. So we got a four-cylinder cast iron. The displacement comes in at 80.2. And the stroke comes in at 79.2. And that should give us 1.6 liters, I think, on the nose. There we go, yeah. We need our direct acting overhead cam, which is technologies are starting to get a little old as well. Cast iron, we don't need variable valve lift, although that's interesting to see that's, oh, no, it shouldn't be available because we are not in the right year period. There we go. I was going to say, that's interesting that variable valve lift is available, but it's not available. Okay, so that's set up correctly. Let's move on to our next bit here. We've got a cast iron crank, a cast conrod, and hyper-eutectic cast iron pistons. Variant capacity is exactly the same as the family capacity. There was never a variant of this engine, so it was left like it is. Moving on, compression ratio in 81 was 7.6. I don't think this will be changing a whole lot because we're going to be using the same kind of fuel and everything. The cam profile is at 40, which is essentially the base. We need the styling. We'll give it a little bit more modern styling, and we'll set it up with yellow as that's the traditional color of the Luna. Engines, need naturally aspirated. It's going to have a carburetor at 2-barrel carb. We need regular unleaded, and the mixture was set at 15, and the ignition timing was set at 32. Obviously, as I said, these things will change as we see where everything is. This was a slightly higher revving engine, so we got 6,200 RPM as our cutoff point. And the exhaust, last thing we need to set up, I believe it was short cast, three-way cat. Oh, the exhaust diameter is 1.25, and dual reverse flow. Keep the engine a little on the quiet side, although we could always change our mind on that. Okay, let's go ahead and run our engine. All right, so it looks like so far we're doing better than one of those 1.6 liter engines, although we're not matching the torque quite. I think they had 80 foot-pounds of torque, if I remember correctly, but 65 horsepower. But the other engine that had 74 horsepower, we're going to have a little bit of difficulty matching, I think, just as we're only doing slight tweaks here. We're not doing major changes. So let's go ahead and look at what we've got. So right now we have a good amount of fuel octane to play with. And as I said, I could always remove one of the reverse flow mufflers. That would bump up our performance a little bit, but obviously our loudness goes up as well. And it does also have an effect on our cost. Production unit time and weight, obviously. I mean, there's some case to be made for having a small economy car be a little bit, cheaper and louder and a little bit less comfortable. But I think I'm going to go with the double reverse flow muffler route anyway. I think our exhaust probably is set up correctly, as it appears to be. Mostly, I think all of our changes are going to be here, maybe a little bit in the cam profile as well. And we probably need to move our RPM limit as well. So for now, I don't think we can afford anything in compression ratio, as even giving us one notch would start us to knock. As I said, we could play with the cam profile, but it looks like even changing at 1 is going to really bring up where our power comes in as far as RPM, which is, for me, usually considered to be a negative because that's going to affect reliability because you're going to have to draw out where your red line is. So let's focus on ignition timing for now, and let's just get that up. So we're having initially some negative results, but it looks like we got it back to being positive. So not really much of a change here, and I think that's a result of the ignition timing changes. Let's see what we can do with our cam profile at this point. Looks like we can bring it up at least 2 points there, and that at least increases our performance up about, it's given us 1.3 horsepower. It's not a massive improvement, but let's see where we're at as far as our reliability goes. So 6,200 RPM, not quite the peak. 6,300, 6,400. And that's not really dipping our reliability too much, so I feel like I can keep pressing it. Okay, it looks like 6,500. It continues to be... All right, so 6,500 is our peak, but we dropped our reliability quite a bit by putting it there, so I'm going to make it 6,400. That's actually quite a distance after where our power comes in, but because our power curve is very flat, the car is able to rev beyond that peak horsepower pretty nicely because it doesn't really drop off. All right. Anything else that I think that we need to change here? I don't think so at the moment. Pretty happy with the way everything looks. As I said, mostly just slight tweaks here and there. Let's see what happens if we remove a reverse flow muffler. We get a little bit. We lose torque, though, by doing that. I'm going to go with the dual reverse flow. All right, so let's name the engine. So I'm going to call it the LE86. The variant is going to be the 1.6. And we're going to save that on up. Let's go here, so make sure it recalculates everything. And save her on up. And close out. And let's do our next engine. So this is going to be the updating of the L135 engine. We might be doing a little bit more with this, so let's make sure we're on the right year here. All right, and we need an inline 4. This is on an aluminum block. We have a bore of 89.6. Go. And we need 95.2 for the stroke. But this is the family capacity. There's going to be difference for the variant capacity. So as we can see, it's 2.4 liters. That's not what we're going for. We're going to go with direct acting overhead cam and aluminum head. And we've got cast iron, hyper-eutectic. And then we need a variant capacity of 87.8, which should give us our 2.2 liters roughly. This is roughly the equivalent of 135 cubic inches. As I said, this was built in the time when my company focused more on the cubic inches. But in modern times, pretty much all car companies now state the liter or the metric measure of the displacement. Some engines, they might in parentheses say what the cubic inches is, but usually prominently featured is the metric measures now. Okay, moving along, we need a compression ratio of 7.4. A little bit lower than our other engine. And a cam profile of 33. This is a little lower revving as well. Style, we're going to go with the more old school look. So you can really differentiate the two engines. And we'll go with yellow. Naturally aspirated. And we've got another carburetor 2-barrel. And as I said, injection, we only have mechanical injection in this time period. You don't get electronic fuel injection until 88, which actually puts us at a little bit of a disadvantage because by 86, electronic fuel injection was becoming more and more common. We're not seeing that as much with Chevy because Chevy was in the 80s definitely kind of behind the ball, and they were sticking with carburetors a lot longer than a lot of other car companies. And some would argue that as a result, GM products from the 80s were not all that great. But, there's differences of opinion on anything like that. Of course, regular, although it is interesting to see that we have premium available to us now, so we can use that in some of our more performance builds. But this is not a performance build, so we will not be using the more quality fuel. I mean, you want to keep it cheap for the consumers, have their running costs be a little bit lower. Fuel mixture needs to be at 15. Ignition timing is also at 33. It's interesting to see two things set up the same setting. It makes me almost wonder if I wrote my notes wrong, but I think it's fine. RPM limit is at 5,700 RPM. As I said, a little bit lower revving. We've got short cast. We need 1.5 inch diameter, 3-way reverse flow. And that should be that. Let's go ahead and run our engine. Okay, so as I said, we're going to have a hard time competing with the two fuel-injected engines. I don't remember what the 2-liter version, how much horsepower it said. I could look real quick here. I think it was something like 84 horsepower. I could be wrong on that. Let's see. 85. So 85 horsepower. And then the more powerful one was 92 or 88, depending on what application it was being used for. So we were able to beat the smaller displacement engine, the 2-liter one. Torque-wise, I don't think we were beating it. I'm not going to recheck what the torque numbers were. The Chevy engines, from what I was seeing, tended to have more of an emphasis on torque than we're going to probably have here. But we're beating the lower displacement engine, but the engine that's higher displacement than the engine than we have right now is going to beat us. I don't think we're going to be able to match 92 or even 88. We might be able to get close to 88, but I don't think we'll get quite there. But again, we have some fuel octane to work with. Everything should be good with our exhaust diameter. Bringing that down doesn't do anything for us. Bringing it up doesn't do anything good for us. Again, we could remove the reverse flow muffler. That would give us a little bit of performance. Nothing really in the horsepower numbers, though. Mostly, we're just reducing weight in exchange for noise. Looks like we also dip our economy a little bit, but it was a minor change. Okay, so we could do the same thing we did in the other engine build, which is essentially just go for ignition timing. The only problem with this engine is I don't know if it will hold up reliability-wise. Because we've got, again, another flat curve here. But as far as we can rev this and start before we start having parts problems, 5,900. Or if we don't want to have it, 5,800. So if we play with this ignition timing too much, it might boost up. Yeah, that's what I thought. It's starting to really boost up our where our power comes in, which is going to have to it's going to force me to have to change where the RPM limit is, which is going to force the car to have a really terrible reliability number, which we don't want out of a small economy car. So we're going to have to think creatively here. We can't quite afford to get that compression ratio up just yet. What happens if we play with the cam profile a little bit? Maybe if we do a little bit of a combination of the two, we might be able to play with, bring that down maybe a little bit, and then bring our compression ratio up. So we're at 88, although we're knocking here. Maybe, don't quite want that. So let's see, bring down the ignition timing. There we go. So we're doing better performance-wise, but I did a bit of tweaking there to get those results. As you can see, I actually ended up bringing down the ignition timing to get what I wanted out of the things. It's kind of unfortunate, though, because we're not using all of our fuel octane. But that's probably going to be the way that we get the most power out of this thing without really hurting our reliability. We could try for... I honestly don't think anything other changes would be worth it. As I said, I want to keep those revs low, and the second I move this ignition timing, it starts being where I don't want it to be, where I have to really draw out the RPM limit. Just to show, I mean, we're going to have to go... Oh. So the peak falls off that quickly? It looks like our performance index peak is at 5,900 RPM, and it just goes down from there. So maybe not too bad having it at here, because this is literally our peak performance for the performance index. Normally, I wouldn't have my red line that close. But hey, let's play with that. That seems like an interesting idea. So we'll get it up here as much as it will let me without knocking. I mean, we have a little bit of reliability issues doing this setup. I'm almost wondering if we're better off not doing what I did. I don't know if it's going to really make a difference. I mean, as far as compression ratio, we might be able to get more power out of this thing, but I ended up... it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I think it's going to be roughly the same kind of power and the way the power comes in. This is kind of an odd setup. Typically speaking, I would see the peak performance of an engine be, you know, at least 400 out from where the power comes in. But this drops off so quickly after where the peak performance is, that it actually is telling me that the best performance index, which performance index, a lot of that measure is, you know, where the red line comes in, what determines that number, is only 200 beyond. So that's interesting to see. We could go with that 5,100 number, but the only thing is, though, with that, the torque curve, I mean, the power curve was so flat that I'm thinking that our peak is going to be exactly the same. I mean, it doesn't really change at all. It's exactly the same. 5,900 RPM is the same, you know, performance index, you know, point that we have for when it's over here. So I think, you know, this is the route we're going to go. We lose a little bit of reliability in the process, but it's not a whole lot. It's roughly a little more than a point. You know, 5,800. It's a point and a half, roughly. But I think that's pretty good where we're at. So let's go ahead and save this on up. So we got the L135 86 version. And we're going to call this the 2.2 variant. And we're going to have another variant of this engine later, but that's going to be in another video. So, all right, I think that's going to wrap everything up. So let's go ahead and take a look at our engines real quickly here and see what we have. So let's sort them by year. We've got the L135 engine, and we've got the LE86, comparing it to the other L135 engine and the LE81. We can see how we've improved things. So a lot of these are just going to be improvements in technology, obviously. So we've got our 1.6 liter here and our 1.6 liter here. So it looks like about 2 horsepower, a little bit more than that. And a little bit more than 2 horsepower, I mean, foot-pounds of torque as well. So pretty even there. Emissions go down. That's good. Responsiveness goes up as we did increase that cam profile. Loudness goes down. Smoothness, same. Production units, same. Cost goes down, but you also have to consider that the advancement in years does affect cost, so that might just be a difference from 81 to 86. Reliability went up. That's good. Economy went up. The fuel octane, we're not using quite all of it, but that's all right. Matter of fact, could we move a little bit further with the 1.6 engine here? Let's revise that. Could have swore I designed it at its limit, but like I did. So 39 was our cutoff point. It might affect where our peak power comes in, though. I'm going to keep it where it is, though. 6,400. That's fine. All right. So I must have. Yeah, I didn't realize that we had more room to move with that fuel octane. So we were able to get a little bit more. Oh, I could have swore this is the same numbers I got. Maybe I just didn't save it right. Huh. All right, so maybe there's a little bit of that bug still where it's not saving things quite right. I could have swore 71.3 horsepower is what we were getting before. All right, well, hopefully it's saved it now. So let's go back over to engines and look at what we have. So yeah, it looks like it saved it. Yeah, we're good. All right, we're good now. That kind of confused me a little bit. I could have swore that this was the number we were getting before. Any case, moving along, let's go look at our L135 engine. So we're mostly going to be looking at the L variant here versus the 2.2 liter variant here. So it looks like almost 4 horsepower improvement. We've got about, well, exactly 2 foot-pounds of torque improvement. Emissions go down again. Responsiveness the same. Loudness went down. Smoothness the same. Production units the same. Cost went down, but again, that could be just a difference in the time period. Reliability looks like the same. So we would have gained out through the advancement of time, but because we were a little bit more aggressive with this engine, obviously gaining a total of 4 horsepower from some of the changes we made, we dipped back down to being roughly the same reliability. Economy went up, pretty good to see that as well. And weight is also down, and we see that parallel heel too. And that's, again, changes of time. So that's what you get. In any case, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video and the continuation of the series into 1986. Again, depending on whether the update comes out and fixes some of the car building bugs I've noticed, I'm either going to move on to the car building of the Edison Luna, or I'll move on to the next model's engines. Either one. I can wait. We have lots of models to go through, lots of engines to build, so I could do either one. No big deal there. So in any case, as I said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is Mouse Gunner signing out.